7th Standard, English, Term 1, Unit 1, PROSE, Eidgah. How wonderful and beautiful was the morning of Eid. The trees looked greener, the fields more festive, the sky had a lovely pink glow. The sun seemed brighter and more dazzling than before to wish the world a very happy Eid. The village was filled with excitement. Everyone was up early to go to the Eidgah. The boys were more excited than the others. They had been talking about it all the time. Finally, the day had come. And now they were impatient. They were taking their treasure out of their pockets, counting and recounting it before putting it back. Muhammad counted 1, 2, 10, 12. He had 12 coins. Mosim had 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 15 coins. With this money, they would buy countless things: toys, sweets, paper pipes, rubber balls, and much more. The happiest of the boys was Hamid. He was only 4, thin and poorly dressed. Last year, his father had died of cholera. Then his mother also died. From then, Hamid lived with his old granny Amina and was as happy as a lark. She told him that his father had gone to earn money and that his mother had gone to Halla to get lovely gifts for him. This made Hamid very happy. Hamid had no shoes on his feet. The cap on his head was soiled and tattered. He knew that his father would come back with sacks full of silver and his mother with gifts from Halla. Then he would have more than Muhammad, Mosim, Nuri, and Sami. Hamid's granny Amina was sad. It was Eid and she did not have even a handful of grains. If only her son were there, it would have been a different kind of Eid. Hamid went to his grandmother and said, "Granny, I will be the first to get back. Don't worry." Amina was worried. Other boys were going out with their fathers. How could she let him go to the fair all by himself? Hamid left with the other boys. Hamid was like one with wings on his feet. They ran on ahead of the elders and waited for them under a tree. They reached the suburbs of the town. On both sides of the road were big houses of the rich. In the gardens, mango and lychee trees were full of fruits. Then they came across the stores of the sweets vendors, all decorated so gaily. Every store had sweets piled up in heaps like mountains. Soon the roads began to get crowded. Some people were on tungas and ikas, some in motor cars, all wearing perfume, all bursting with excitement. The children were a calm and contented lot. For village children, everything in the town was wonderful. Whatever caught their eye, they stood and gaped at it with wonder. At last, the Eidgah came into view. There were row upon row of worshippers as far as the eye could see. Newcomers lined themselves behind the ones already there. The prayer was over. Men embraced each other. They descended on the sweet and toy vendors' stores like an army moving to attack. There was the merry-go-round with wooden elephants, horses, and camels. You paid 1 paisa and had 25 rounds of fun. Muhammad and Mohsin and Nuri and other boys mounted the horses and camels. Hamid watched them from a distance. All he had were 3 paisas. He couldn't part with a third of his treasure for a few miserable rounds. They were soon done with their rides. Then it was time for the toys. There was a row of stalls on one side with all kinds of toys, soldiers and milkmaids, kings and ministers, water carriers and washerwomen and holy men. Mohammed bought a policeman in khaki with a red turban on his head and a gun on his shoulder. Mohsin bought a water carrier while Nouri got a lawyer. Those toys cost 2 paisa each. Hamid had only 3 paisas. How could he buy such expensive toys? If they dropped out of his hand, they would be smashed to bits. If a drop of water fell on them, the color would run. But he looked at them hungrily and wished he could hold them in his hands for just a moment or two. After the toys, it was sweets. Someone bought sesame seed candy, others gulab jamuns and halwa. They smacked their lips with relish. Only Hamid was left out. Next to the sweet shops, there were a few hardware stores and jewelry shops. The boys were not interested in anything there, so they walked ahead except Hamid. It occurred to Hamid that his granny did not have a pair of tongs. Each time she cooked chapatis, the iron pan burnt her hands. If he bought her a pair of tongs, she would be very pleased. She would never again burn her fingers. It would be a really useful thing to have in the house. So Hamid stopped to look at a pile of tongs at the hardware shop and asked the shopkeeper, "How much for this pair of tongs?" The shopkeeper looked at him and replied, "It's not for you." "Is it for sale or not?" "Why should it not be for sale? It will cost you 6 paisa." Hamid's heart sank. "Tell me the correct price," he said. "All right, it will be 5 paisa. Take it or leave it." Hamid said, "Will you give it to me for 3?" Then he walked away, afraid that shopkeeper would scream at him. But the shopkeeper did not scream. On the contrary, he called Hamid back and gave him the pair of tongs. Hamid carried it on his shoulder as if it were a gun to show it to his friends. Mohsin laughed and said, "Are you crazy? What will you do with the tongs?" Hamid flung the tongs on the ground and replied, "Try and throw your water carrier on the ground. It will break." Mohammed said, "Are these tongs some kind of toy?" "Why not?" replied Hamid. "Place them across your shoulders and it is a gun. Carry them in your hands and it is like the musical instrument carried by singing monks. My tongs are like a tiger among toys." Sami, who had bought a small tambourine, asked, "Will you exchange them for my tambourine? It is worth 8 paisas." But Hamid would not. The pair of tongs won every one over to its side. By 11, the village was again filled with excitement. All those who had gone to the fair were back at home. Hamid too returned home. As soon as she heard his voice, Granny Amina ran out of the house, picked him up and kissed him. Suddenly she noticed the tongs in his hand. "Where did you find these tongs?" "I bought them." "How much did you pay for them?" 3 paisas. "You are a stupid child. It is almost noon and you haven't had anything to eat or drink. Couldn't you find anything better in the fair than this pair of iron tongs?" Hamid replied in an injured tone, "You burn your fingers on the iron pan, so I bought them." Granny was deeply moved by Hamid's selflessness. She started crying. For the wretched woman, the pair of tongs was as precious as sacks of silver. Story by Munshi Premchand, translated and adapted by Uma Raman. Glossary: dazzling, extremely bright, tattered, torn, suburbs, outlying area, gaily, in bright colors, gaped, stared, smack your lips, open and close lips noisily to show enjoyment, relished, enjoyed or took pleasure in the taste. Tongs, a tool used to hold hot things, precious, valuable, wretched, unhappy. Do you know? There are 109 members in Marappanhalli Laxmaya family who live in Karnataka's Kolar district. It is one among the last few purely joint families in India. 85 members of this massive family live under a single roof that spans 20 rooms. The other 24 live in the fields next to the house.